Please note that the content in this podcast is for informational purposes only and not substitute for professional mental health advice. If you or someone you know is in crisis, please contact your local emergency services by dialing 911. For immediate emotional support, you can also reach the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by calling or texting 988. Remember, help is always available.
Hi, everyone. This is Marilyn from Resilient Social Work, and I'm inviting you to join me in episode 3, where we talk with Vivian about our grandmother's legacy, which is very timely. When we recorded, it was the day before the elections, and we were actually supposed to talk about domestic violence and the impact that it's had in my life, but also talk about our clients. So that will be a different conversation for another day. Because when we sat down, what was present was the death anniversary of Vivian's grandmother. And we decided to just go ahead and record on that. And it was a beautiful conversation of just recalling our grandmother's strengths, how resilient they were during their time, and both her grandmother and my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, are no longer alive, but we carry a lot of their gifts within us, and their gifts of love, which is the message I think that strongly resonates throughout our conversation, is that they were very loving people. And their life was driven through love, and by love, the love for humanity and the love for others. They both kind of sacrificed a lot, and I think after the election, this message is super important to remember that we are not alone in this world, and that we have gifts from our ancestors that have been passed down to us. Just as the trauma wounds have been passed down, we also have gifts of knowledge, gifts of understanding, gifts of resilience, and of courage to live our lives to the fullest, but also the gift of love and the gift of leading with heart for our decisions, leading our lives, right, through love, by being heart-led. And as we go into this new chapter in history, after this election, we have to remember that we have tools at our disposal that we cannot necessarily see, but we can act upon and we can call upon. And those tools are, again, right, the resilience, the love, and the wisdom that is embedded in our genes, through our epigenetics, that we have in there, tools of survival. Because obviously we are here, which means that our ancestors had to figure out how to make this happen, okay? So we have those gifts within us. And as we are facing these very difficult times, confusing times, beautiful times because the collective is alive. And we see that women are rising up and we are claiming our power back, which is beautiful. So I think this episode is super timely, and where we are in our world, where we are in claiming our divinity as women and reclaiming our power and remembering our power. So I hope you enjoy it, and I hope that you also have some time to reflect afterwards and look at what are some of the gifts that your ancestors left you with? What are some of the knowledge that is there that we can tap into to make this world a better place? Okay. And to lead this world with heart. So I'll leave you with that. I hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much for listening.
All right. Welcome, everyone. We're here. This is Marilyn from Marilyn Social Work, and I'm here with Vivian. We're here for episode 3 of our podcast. I can't believe it, right? And we were going to talk about something different today, but that's what happens. We always, we're going to go with the flow and see what came today. So we're going to talk about our grandmas today and we'll see what flows from there. But what I'm seeing right now is sort of the legacies maybe that they left behind. What are some of the gifts they left us with, and lessons that we are maybe still following today, and the reason maybe why we fell into this field. And I don't know. Let's see what happens. Let's see where the conversation takes us.
Sure.
But yeah.
I do appreciate our humanness and fluidity to be able to land at this conversation.
Yeah.
It was not, it wasn't part of the plan. It is fully present with me. It's like so in the moment. And I think because of what I feel like we created here, like this safety, this rapport, this openness, I was absolutely okay to say the shit is home. So here we go. Here we end up here.
Yeah.
I don't know. How did we end up here? Well, I know how. Maybe give some context. Because yesterday was a big day in my world and my journey. And it is so closely connected to it as everything to do with my grandma. And in turn, myself. And that's work.
Yeah.
And yesterday, I celebrated her 10-year memorial, which is just beyond, especially for me personally, because I do believe time is a construct. So for me, I did write about that last night. I was like, 10 years, what does that mean? And today, 10 years ago, was different than today, yesterday. It was, the day yesterday was the date on paper, calendar time versus my timeline now, where I am. And it was a wild epiphany journey to get here. And I'm so happy and ready to talk about it. It was, I don't even know if I shed a heavy tear yesterday, which I spent a lot of November shedding, thinking about my grandma and her loss 10 years ago. And yesterday was so bright, even the day after the rain.
Oh.
It was sunny, it was gorgeous, it wasn't heavy. It was a day, it was like it was the same day, but a different day.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome that
So
you're able to see
kind
of your journey in your grieving, right? Because I remember 10 years ago when you lost your grandma, and it was so impactful. It was such a big blow in your life. And to see you now 10 years later, where you are able to kind of celebrate a little bit more, at least see some of the light, right? Some of the brightness and not so dark in November. So that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I lost my grandma. This is my maternal grandma. I lost her, I don't know, it's been 17 years, maybe around there. It's been a while. And At first, it was the same. It was a big blow at first because she lived with us for a while, for a long time. Um, and it took a while, but she's one of my ancestors now, and I know Dia de los Muertos just passed, so they're very present too, and maybe that's why we're talking about them because you know they were just here, right? And they're always here. I don't know. I feel like my grandma's always here rooting for me, and you know, she's one of my ancestors that I think definitely is guiding me, and it's my light, in reminding me of the strength and reminding me of the resilience that we have within our family, within our family line, and the gifts, right? All the gifts that we have too. So, so there, she's a very powerful person in my life. My grandma, yeah.
Yeah, here we are finding new ways to relate after many years of knowing each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's through this connection with grandma. I can't, excuse me, I can't even get away from the timing of this conversation this weekend. That holiday, my family observes the Catholic faith, and it was like All Souls weekend. It was all of this life and death, all in a moment, or quote calendar moment on paper, but really means so much to so many of us. And I really want to appreciate my grandma for who she was, not only to me, to our family. She was a tiny little lady, literally like me, 5 foot, itty bitty little lady, spicy as ever. She raised 10, she bore 10 kids, 5 boys and 5 girls, and raised all of them, even after her husband passed, and never remarried, and was my mother role. She didn't give birth to me, but she did all the things that mother did. The things my own bio mom wasn't ever able to do. So I think that I always tell her, like, she was my saving grace of being semi-decent human. Because she met those needs. And now, 10 years later, it is so special to be able to think of legacy, hers. Since her passing, I've started, that's when my own journey of legacy started. I started considering that, how I wanted to live, truly. For me, when I think of death, it inevitably makes me think of life. But it's just all the same. And I can share a little bit more about November, especially. But when I think of her legacy, her tiny little self, humble woman, an immigrant, and so faithful. She was generous with her love. She was so loving. And that has become my legacy for the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Being generous.
I love that. That's so funny that we have that in common. But maybe that's why we also share, right? In this journey of bringing love, I think, and light, and fighting darkness, or helping people find the light, right? That's why we are in this field of healing, in therapy. I mean, we sit here with the darkest stories ever, and we see people pull through, and it's so beautiful. That journey is beautiful. But my grandma was a very loving person too. So I think part of...
Was she a little lady?
No. So I want to say she was probably a little taller than me. So I shrunk. I shrunk after kids. But maybe she was like 5'5", 5'6", so she was, to me, that's tall, so she was taller to you. That's pretty tall. But she was a warrior, but she was so loving. And I'm from El Salvador, so in her time, she suffered so much. So she endured so much suffering. She didn't, she was super smart. She was an entrepreneur. So she had her first kid when she was like 14, 15. She went to like fourth grade. I think that maybe that was the highest that she did, but she was a math whiz. I guess that's so interesting. She was a math whiz.
And I'm not. Sorry, Grandma. I didn't inherit that.
So I did inherit that from her, but I'm not that great at math no more. So she was. So she was a pioneer in her time, you know. She also had 10 kids and raised them all. And then she raised my grandpa's children from other relationships that he had with other women. And at that, that's how she shared her love. Like, she was just accepting, and she'd be like, they're my children, and they're my uncles and aunts, you know, and there's no difference in whether they were her biological children or not. They were her husband's children. And the same with my mom and all her siblings. They're their siblings, you know, not step siblings. They're just their siblings. So she was very accepting and loving, you know, but she had a very difficult life. But she was a gifted woman. Like, she was one of those pioneer women a trailblazer. So she divorced my grandpa because, yes, there was DV also during that time, right? It's been here forever. So my grandpa, they both separated. So during those times, you know, that wasn't very common at all. But she separated, you know?
Not especially initiated by the wife.
So in that, it shows her strength and her power, right? And her resilience with 10 children. And she had a ferreteria, like a little Home Depot. Okay. That was her business. So she had a little, like, you know, Home Depot and in our town. And she also we lived in a port. Okay. So at the port, you know, there's a lot of sailors that will come in and out. So she also had this, I'm going to call it restaurant. It's not really a restaurant, but she will serve food. Okay. She will serve food to the people. And there was music, kind of like a bar / cafe, you know? Yes. And that's how she supported all her 10 kids. Okay. And of course, the kids grew up. They also had families. And then she raised some of their families and their children. Okay. Because they all stayed there in the house. And then some of my aunts came to live here. So she raised those children, her grandchildren, okay, that were left behind. You know, unfortunately, she lost her leg. She was diabetic, okay, but she ended up losing her legs it was the time of the earthquake in El Salvador, so like 1986. And at that time, you know, she ended up coming to live with us. So that was really hard, okay, after being such an independent woman. So when I say I get some of the gifts from her, is her gift, I think, of the math, right? The entrepreneurship, the strength of resilience, of just keep looking forward and not getting caught up in the hardship, because she had a ton of hardship, but yeah, she still endured, you know, and she kept moving and she kept going forward. And she was amazing. Wow. She was amazing. And when she came to live with us, it was really hard because she had to let go of her independence. So that was really difficult. How old were you when she came? I was like 12, like 11, 12.
Old enough to understand what's happening and to have a relationship with her. And
yeah, and then we moved. We came here. We came to the U.S., okay? And she joined us here later, okay? But, and she lived with us then too until she passed, you know, about 17 years ago. But in her time, again, she was a pioneer in her being a businesswoman in sustaining her business, in being a single mom with a business, and sustaining her family, and others, because she will be the kind that would, if there was a homeless person on the street, she will bring him home. Or you need something to eat, she will just bring him in. Strangers would pass by her home, and if they needed a place to stay, she will give it to them without question. So she was that kind of woman, very giving, very loving, and
accepting, like you said.
Yeah, and accepting. So I think my social worky self,
I'm thinking the same.
heart comes from that, right? Yeah. That's part of her legacy and her gifts, is the unconditional love for people, and seeing the beauty and seeing the humanity in people, which I think,
and being resilient.
Yes, and being resilient, like pulling the strings, like no matter what's going on, it's also being very trustful in. For her, it was in God, so for me, it's the universe, God. I do believe in a higher power, nature, I believe in nature. But for her, she trusted. She trusted that she would be provided for, right? Because again, I don't know how she did it with all those kids,
exactly like my grandma.
This faith, right?
Unwavering faith, yes. Correct.
Mm-hmm.
My grandma was very different in some ways, and also similar in many ways too. Even the 10 children, I'm like, how? Yeah. Wow. Both of these ladies had and raised. Yeah.
I mean, so much hardship, so much hardship. She did a lot of firsts. My mom was telling me that her last child she lost in the womb, and they were basically leaving her to rot. They were not, they were not taking the baby out because they weren't doing C-sections at the time. And that's what they did back then. If you had a child that died in the womb, they will not deliver. They will just wait to see if you were able to kind of abort it yourself and deliver, or if not, it will just die. So this angel, this Dr. Angel, saw her at the hospital, and he was one of the pioneers and said, "Why are we letting this woman die? Like, what? This is ridiculous." So he saved her. He ended up, doing a C-section on her to get the baby out. And she said, my mom said it was recorded, so I have to go look for that, because she said that it was a teaching hospital. So, but even at those things, like, she suffered so much, but in her suffering, there was still a lesson, and that's what I take. In all her suffering, there was still something that was a gift to this world in some way. And I think that's all of us. Our suffering is still, we suffer, and our resilience is our gift, right? That we're able to survive it, and we're able to continue and say, wow, humanity is amazing.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
It's such a special thing.
Yeah.
And I do think we all share that too. And for hearing your story and how you just processed your grandma's legacy and her present. For me, when I totally relate, and then I think a little bit further too, I think of my grandma's story, and what I've learned from her and humanity also is you still have a choice how you show up and treat others, and move, and your choices, and how you live, and how you breathe, and the words you choose, how you treat people. As hard if your life has been, in so many ways, so many losses she's known, she is a refugee, and came over with her husband died within the first several years of them being here. Wow. They came to Pennsylvania. One of her children died en route here, and obviously at that point you have to just get rid of all of that. So he's somewhere in the ocean, and we were never able to give that proper burial. And I don't know what my grandma how she didn't speak on it, so I don't know what that was like for her.
Wow, that must have been so hard for her. That's horrible.
And then all 9 of her other children came over in waves and in different ways. And at some point or another, the 9 surviving that are here all became college educated, successful in their own right, faithful to the church. I'm like, how did you do that, lady? After my grandpa passed away, first year being here, she didn't speak English, and raised all her children to be self-sustainable and their own survivors in their own way, and so kind and generous and loving themselves that she never had to work. She never had to think about remarriage. She was never a businesswoman. She never had to provide for them. They did for her without a skip of a heartbeat. Not even a blink of like burden or like obligation. It was inherent. Like, of course, she is the head of our what? She's our queen, like the head of our family. Yes, of course. It was easy for any and all of us, even French, to jump right in to be of service and treat her the same way. Honestly, she was. She was angry. She wasn't. She wouldn't put you down or make anyone feel small. Like, it was very. It's just loving. It was so different than a lot of traditional old school Vietnamese parenting or grandparenting. She was really parenting. She parented. She raised so many of her grandbabies too. That's just what happens. Multi-generational homes. And I have all those memories. I wouldn't trade it. And she never skipped a beat about giving back. She never had an income, and she still donated. How? Yes. She would hoard all of her kids' money, like, make her own commitments and sacrifices to make sure she had enough money to give back. She'd always send money back to the family to have people put prayers in for us, specifically, especially during my dark days. She's like, I have people praying for you. Oh, thank you. I need it right now. Thank you. And she was always smiling and a creative. This is what I love about this. My whole family is a creative, and it totally reflects in me. I'm not like what in the what? I am not a businesswoman. I don't think like that naturally. I'm creative to my spirit. We would come home, or we'd be walking up from school, and we'd be hearing Michael Jackson, and my grandma, what the hell? And she's just bumping cooking. So she was a chef. So she was creative in her artistry and in cooking. She was creative she loved music. She played piano. So we all played the piano. We grew up around the arts. My dad is an architect. We have painters, and we have people who sing. My whole family was their own little band when they were sponsored here in Pennsylvania. My uncles and aunts, they formed a little band for the church. They were sponsored by a family in Pennsylvania who just took me to so awesome. This little Vietnamese family fresh off the boat and really helped them get on the feet. And then we ended up coming to California. And then actually I found out, honestly, probably within the last 10 years, maybe right before she passed. I don't even know if she was alive yet, or alive still, to be honest. Her sister, who was single, never married, devoted to the church, we always consider her stern and very straight and narrow. I did not know this, but she was a social worker. And one of my cousins did like a deep dive and went back in her family history, and she was a social worker in Vietnam. That's so awesome. Yes. Well, I didn't even know that. That's a thing. Yes. And she was advocating and out here serving. Oh, of course it's in my family. My grandma worked for the Department of Education, which was part of the reasons why my family was able to come. Most of them in that certain waves during that time, during the war, because of her affiliation and wanting to work with humans. But I was like, what? That lady was a social worker. And it's in our blood. It is. Somewhere, somehow. And I do see them as my ancestors. And I believe now that I'm where I am in my spiritual journey, that it's even much further in my bloodline or in my ancestry. It's just, in Vietnamese, my grandma taught me this. My other grandma who's living taught me this word. It's called Joy Ja. And I never heard that, and then or if I did, it didn't feel it now. Joy is like the sky. Ja is like given, like God given, the heavens given. Like this stuff is
Beautiful.
just at this point of my point.
It is.
It's in our blood to care about humans, to think about humanity, to treat others with kindness, to move the collective forward despite other resistance and forces. It's steady in my purpose. It's so unshakable at this point where I'm like, it's just me.
It's just part of your being. That's the way I feel. We can't shake it off. It's just part of us.
And I'm so proud now. And it's her too. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I hope she's
I'm sure she is. They are proud. You're doing the work, you know. You're doing the work, and I think where we are now, where they were before, I think we definitely have more freedom, and we are able to do more than maybe they could have, right, within what was available to them at that time, just with societal expectations and everything. But I think we are definitely following in their footsteps of sharing love and kindness, and not just within our circle, but I think with everybody else, you know, and having that expectation or having being able to still see the beauty in humanity, which I think is so challenging right now because there's so much crap going on in the world, you know, and it's so hard to see the beauty, but oh my God, the beauty is there, and it's so amazing. You know, I'm following the stuff in Spain where they had the floods in Valencia, and there was this bridge full of people that were going to help the people there, and it just made my heart feel so good because I was like, there it is. It's in our face. You need to see it. You need to see that we are beautiful and that when push comes to shove, we show up for each other, you know, and we think that we're not, but we will. We do, you know.
shows how connected we are. It shows that collective purpose. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, it is beautiful to see that, and I think that's part of my grandma's legacy and my great grandma. You know, so with my great grandma too, she was also a businesswoman. They owned a bakery. That's why I love bread so much. I'm like, darn it, that's where the bread comes from. They own a bakery. So, and then before that, from what my mom has shared, they were like door to door salesmen people, you know, my great grandpa and my great grandma. So they, you know, it's in the blood. The business thing is in the blood, but also the kindness and the humanness. And don't get me wrong, my grandma was a tough woman. I mean, she was loving and accepting, but at the same time, when it came to parenting, she was very rigid. But those were the old school times. That's the way you discipline during those times.
That's why I am who I am. She has structure. She, we don't play with grandma. You don't play. You don't.
You don't play. But their strengths was, I think, what I take from my grandma and my great grandma. You know, even my great aunt, who was she was a healer. She had a pharmacy. You know, so I think for her, all of them, I think they're my female lineage where I get some of my stuff. You know,
this is your maternal.
That's my maternal grandma and great grandma, and it's my paternal aunt, great aunt. But I think just looking at the women lineage, right, the female lineage and ancestry, there's so much there, but the love is the key, right? Love, I think, is the legacy that they're leaving behind.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'm asking, let me tell you why I'm asking, because I'm curious where I think the meaning of it. This, for me, I guess, is how I breathe and also what I think about. Like made that connection to all the amazing my lineage. What would be your legacy? Like, what are you choosing? Because it is us, them living on through us, and for me, it's been so healing and so powerful to like add on to it. Not only just live their legacy, but be my own and make my own meaning of it. So what would be yours?
I think it still resonates with love and humanness. My legacy will, for me, what I'm trying to do, even with this, right? Like this whole resilient social work project, business, I think it is sharing the strengths that we have as human beings, because that's what I see in humanity. We are strong. Oh my God, we are so resilient. And like I said, the people that sit in the couch here with us, right? All our clients that have come through, through us, we see how, even though it is so dark, even though we have experienced so much horrible things, we still have the capacity to heal. So I think that's my legacy, that it's sharing with people that we have the capacity to heal, and we can choose. We can choose to stay in the darkness and in the crap, or we can choose to do a little bit of hard work, or maybe very hard work sometimes. But even just look beyond that. Look that we can move past it, right? And we can live our life in the present so that we can have a funner future, right? And not be stuck in the grief for so long, or the anger and resentment, because that just holds us back. So my legacy is to help people, give people tools so that they can get out of the darkness and their hardship, so that they can be the best selves. What about you?
I mean, I think that the idea, those words, generous with my love, I guess was maybe, I don't know if that was with my love. That's that part that I'm inheriting. When I was listening to you speak, and then I was thinking also, like, obviously what I hope to be remembered by my legacy, it always comes down to being human, humanness. And when I heard you say capacity to heal, I'm like, of course she would say that. And of course it would be linked back to DB, because that's where we were going to
originally talk about
Marilyn. And for any of listeners who happen to have ever sat in one of our DB groups on Saturday with me, that is exactly verbatim the language I use. I am here to honor humanness in everything. Means that the whole capacity of our experience, like you said, the good, the bad, the dark, the light, and also for me, being human means everybody has heard me say that. I have 10 years of notes written down, of group notes about with those words specifically. And I do think that's my legacy, of making space for people, physical beings, to be okay with their feelings. And for me, that's an entire capacity of emotion. That's your story, and that's your knowing you have the capacity. Me, that is so I talk about all the time. That is like the language in my therapy. If you've sat with me in a session, for sure you've heard me talk about being a human myself first. If you are an intern I work with in a clinical supervisory relationship, you also know every check-in is how are you as a human and how are you as a patient.
Yeah, you can't separate them. We're whole. You know what I mean?
But I'm so interested in that, I'm so passionate about the human experience. So I try to make space for it in every conversation, so that other people, and it becomes part of our
regular language. Yes, mainstream language.
I mean, that's my legacy.
Oh, yeah, that's you. That's you. It's the humanness. I think that's why we're so connected. Same. Because we see
powerful women.
Yeah.
I'm leading with that. I'm gonna marry them. And I want to find power and strength, knowing that army. Interesting.
Yeah, we'll leave our mothers for another day.
Oh,
just
army.
But yeah, our grandmas and great grandma, all our ancestors, I think our female lineage is, very powerful, and we definitely have to remember, because in thinking of the divine feminine, there's a book I read. I can't remember what it was called. I think maybe it was the divine feminine or the Tao or something. I don't know. but it was the power of love. It comes down to love, right? It was the power of unconditional love and acceptance and letting sort of things fall where they will. And I think we go back to what we said about our grandmas and their faith, right? Having this faith that things are where they need to be, right? And they will be where they need to be. So the trusting piece, which I think is very hard, especially when we have experienced trauma. To trust is hard. But the message of love, yes, the message of love, I think is what I want to kind of close up with, is that we all have the capacity to love and we all have the capacity to hurt, and it is a choice. We can choose to love ourselves, or we can choose to hurt ourselves, or we can choose to hurt others, right, in the process too. But we can choose to love and accept and remember that we have the capacity to heal as humans, because that's what human means. It's having both. We talked about the dualities, right? Yeah. We can hurt, but we can also heal. So thank you so much for listening to us today. And maybe I just want to ask, consider, what about your lineage, right? What are some of the strengths that you can pull from your lineage that you think you are using today? And what is the legacy that you want to leave behind? Even if it's not maybe the one that your ancestors left you with. If you want to make different choices, what are the choices that you're going to make to leave your own legacy? What do you want to be remembered by? So I'll let you marinate on that. But thank you so much for listening to us today. And we'll see you next time.